Angkor Wat? Angkor Wat, Temple City, City of Temples, located in the northwest Cambodia, is the largest religious structure in the form of a temple complex in the world by land area, measuring 162.6 hectares. At the center of the temple stands a quincunx of 4 towers surrounding a central spire that rises to the height of 65 meters above the ground. The temple has 3 rectangular galleries. It's raised above the next. It lies within an outer wall 3.6 kilometers long and a more than 5 kilometers long. The temple was built at the behest of the Surya Varman II in the early 12th century in Yasovarapura, the capital of the Khmer Empire, as the state temple for the empire. Originally constructed dedicated to the Hindu god Vishnu in the early 12th century, it was converted to a Buddhist temple toward the end of the 12th century. Angkor Wat combines 2 basic plans of Khmer temple architecture: the Temple Mountain and the lateral gallery temple. It is designed to represent Mount Meru, half of the devas in Hindu and Buddhist cosmology. Unlike most Angkorian temples, Angkor Wat is oriented to the west. Scholars are divided as to the significance of this. The temple is a sign of grandeur and harmony of its architecture, extensive bas-reliefs and statues of Buddhas and Devas that adorn its walls. As the best researched temple at the site, it is the only one to have remained a significant religious center since its foundation. The temple is at the top of the high classical style of Khmer architecture. It is one of the most important pilgrimage sites for the Buddhists in Cambodia and around the world. It has become a symbol of Cambodia, appearing on its national flag, and it is the country's main tourist attraction. Angkor Wat plays a major role in converting Cambodia into the Buddhist nation. The modern name Angkor Wat means Temple City or City Temples in Khmer. Angkor meaning city or capital city. It's a vernacular form of the word Ângkôr, which comes from the Sanskrit. Its Nagara Wat is a Khmer word for the temple grounds, also derived from Sanskrit, meaning enclosure. The original name of the temple was Phra Vishnuloka or Parama Vishnuloka, meaning the shop of dwelling of Vishnu. Angkor Wat lies 5.5 kilometers north of the modern town of Siem Reap and a short distance south and slightly east of the previous capital, which was centered at Ba Phum. In an area of Cambodia where there is an ancestral group of ancient structures, it is the southernmost of Angkor's main sites. According to the myth, the construction of Angkor Wat was ordered by Indra to serve as a palace for his son Preja Katmili. According to the 13th century Chinese traveler Zhou Takwat, some believe that the temple was constructed in a single night by a divine architect. The initial design and construction of the temple took place in the first half of the 12th century, during the reign of Suryavarman II through 1113 circa 1150. All the original religious motifs derived from Hinduism, branching from the Saiva tradition of previous kings. Angkor was instead dedicated to Vishnu. It was built as the king's state temple and capital city. As neither the foundation still unknown, any contemporary inscription referring to the temple have been found. Its original name is Ângkor, but it may have been known as Vishnu after the presiding deity. Work seemed to have ended shortly after the king's death, leaving some of the bas-reliefs decoration unfinished. The term Vishnuloka or Vishnuloka literally means the king who has gotten to the supreme world of Vishnu, which referred to Suryavarman II posthumously and intended to venerate his glory and memory. In 1177, approximately 27 years after the death of Suryavarman II, Angkor was sunk by the giants. The traditional enemies of the Khmer. Thereafter, the empire was restored by the new king Jayavarman VII, who established a new capital and state temple, Angkor and the Mayuan respectively. A few kilometers north, dedicated to Buddhism. Because the king believed that the Hindu gods had failed, Angkor was therefore also gradually converted into a Buddhism site, and many Hindu sculptures were replaced by Buddhist art. Towards the end of the 12th century, Angkor gradually transformed from a Hindu site of worship to Buddhism, which continues to the present day. Angkor is unusual among the Angkor temples in that although it was largely neglected after the 16th century, it was never completely abandoned. 14 inscriptions dating from the 17th century discovered in the Angkor area testify to Japanese Buddhist pilgrims that had established small settlements alongside Khmer locals. At that time, the temple was thought by the Japanese civilizer to be the famed Jetavana Garden of the Buddha, which was originally located in the kingdom of Magadha, India. The best known inscription tells of Ângkôr Gazufusa, who celebrated the Khmer New Year at the Angkor Wat in year 1632. One of the first Western visitors to the temple was Antonio da Madalena, a Portuguese prior who visited in year 1586 and said that it is of such extraordinary construction that it is not possible to describe it with a pen, particularly since it is like no other building in the world. It has towers and decoration and all the refinements which the human genius can conceive of. In year 1860, the temple was effectively rediscovered by the French naturalist and explorer Henry Ward, to popularize the site in the West through the publication of the travel notes in which he wrote, "One of these temples, a rival to that of Solomon, and erected by some ancient Michelangelo, might take an honorable place beside our most beautiful buildings. It is greater than anything left to us by Greece or Rome, and present a sad contrast to the state of barbarism in which the nation is now plunged." There were no ordinary dwellings or houses or other sites of settlement, including cooking utensils, weapons, or items of clothing usually found at ancient sites. Instead, there is only evidence of the monuments themselves. The artistic legacy of the Angkor Wat and other Khmer monuments in the Ângkor regions led directly to France adopting Cambodia as a protectorate on the 11th August 1863 and invading Siam to take control of the ruins. This quickly led to Cambodia reclaiming lands in the northwestern corner of the country that had been under Siamese Thai control since AD 1351, or by some accounts AD 1431. Angkor Wat's aesthetics were on display in the plaster cast museum of Louis de la Porte called Musée Indochinois, which insisted in the Parisian Trocadero Palace from circa 1880 to mid-1920s. The 20th century saw a considerable restoration of the Angkor Wat, gradually in terms of laborers and archaeologists pushed back the jungle and exposed the expanses of stone, permitting the sun to once again illuminate the dark corners of the temple. Angkor Wat caught the attention and imagination of the wider audience in Europe when the pavilion of French Protectorate of Cambodia, as part of the French Indochina, recreated the life-size replica of Angkor Wat during Paris Colonial Exposition in year 1931. Cambodia gained independence from France on 9 November 1953 and has controlled Angkor Wat since that time. It is safe to say that from the colonial period onwards until the site's nomination as UNESCO World Heritage in year 1992, this specific temple of Angkor Wat were instrumental of the foundation of the modern and gradually globalized concept of built cultural heritage. Restoration work was interrupted by the Cambodian Civil War, and Khmer Rouge controlled the country during the 1970s and 1980s, but relatively little damage was done during this period. Carbon Khmer Rouge force used whatever would remain in the building structures for firewood, and a shootout between Khmer Rouge and Vietnamese forces put a few bullet holes in the bas reliefs. Far more damage was done after the wars by activists working out of Thailand, which in the late 1980s and early 1990s claimed almost every head that could be lopped off the structures, including reconstructions. The temple is a powerful symbol of Cambodia and is a source of great national pride that has factored into Cambodia's diplomatic relations with France, the United States, and its neighbor Thailand. A depiction of Angkor Wat has been a part of Cambodian national flags since the introduction of the first version circa 1863. From a larger historical and even transcultural perspective, however, the temple of the Angkor Wat did not become a symbol of national pride sui generis, but had been inscribed into a larger political cultural process of French colonial heritage production, in which the original temple site was represented in French colonial and universal exhibition in Paris and Marseille between 1889 and 1937. In December 2015, it was announced that the research team from the University of Sydney had found a previously unseen ensemble of buried towers built and demolished during the construction of Angkor Wat, as well as the massive structure of the Ângkor purpose on its south side and wooden fortifications. The findings also include evidence of low density resident soil occupation in the region, with tree, ponds, and moss. These indicate that the temple precinct, bounded by moat and wall, may not have been used exclusively by the priestly elite. As was previously told, the team used LiDAR, ground penetrating radar, and targeted excavation to the map Angkor Wat. Angkor Wat. Angkor Wat is a unique combination of the Temple Mountain, the standard design for the Empire State temples, and the later blend of concentric galleries, most of which were derived from the religious beliefs of Hinduism originally. The construction of Angkor Wat also suggests that there was a celestial significance with certain features of the temple. This is observed in the temple's east-west orientation and lines of sight from tourists within the temple that show specific towers to be at the precise location of the sunrise on its solstice. The temple is a representation of Mount Meru, the home of the gods according to the Hindu mythology. The central sequence of towers symbolize the 5 peaks of the mountain, and the walls and moats symbolize the surrounding mountain range and ocean. Access to the upper areas of the temple was progressively more exclusive, with the laity being admitted only to the lowest level. The Angkor Wat Temple's main tower lies to the morning sun of the spring equinox. Unlike most Khmer temples, Angkor Wat is oriented to the west rather than the east. This has led many, including Maurice Glaze and George Godels, to conclude that Surya Varman intended it to serve as his funerary temple. Further evidence for this view is provided by the bas-reliefs, which proceed in the counterclockwise direction, Prasaya in Hindu terminology, as this is the reverse of the normal order. Rituals take place in reverse order during the Brahminic funeral service. Archaeologist Josh Hickam also described a container which may have been a funerary jar, which was recovered from the central tower. It has been nominated by some as the greatest expenditure of energy on disposal of corpses, freemen and jackals. However, note that several other temples of Angkor depart from the typical Eastern orientation and suggest that Angkor Wat's alignment was due to its dedication to Vishnu, who was associated with the West. Drawing on the temple's alignment and dimensions, and on the content and arrangements of the bas-reliefs, Register Eleanor Manica argues that the structure represents a claimed new era of peace under King Surya Varman II, as the measurements of solar and lunar time cycles were built into the space of Angkor Wat. This divine mandate to rule was anchored to consecrated chambers and corridors meant to perpetuate the king's power and to honor and placate the deities manifest in the heavens above. Many suggestions have been received with a mixture of interest and skepticism in academic circles. She distances herself from the speculations of others, such as Graham Hancock, that Angkor Wat is part of a representation of the constellation Draco. Angkor Wat is a Brahma symbol of the classical style of the Khmer architecture, the Angkor Wat style to which it has given its name. By the 12th century, Khmer architects had become skilled and confident in the use of sandstones rather than brick or laterite as a main building material. Most of the visible areas are of sandstone blocks, while laterite was used for the outer wall and for hidden structural parts. The binding agent used to join the blocks is yet to be identified, although natural resin or slag glam has been suggested. The temple has strong principles of all the harmony of its design. According to Maurice Glaze, a mid-strength designer conservator of Angkor, the temple attains a classic perfection by the restrained monumentality of its finely balanced elements and the precise arrangement of its proportions. It is a work of power, unity, and style. Architecturally, the elements characteristic of the style include the ogival, redundant towers shaped like lotus buds, half galleries to broaden passageways, arches, galleries connecting enclosures, and the cruciform terrace which appear along the main axis of the temple. Typical decorative elements are devatas or apsaras, bas-reliefs, and on pediments, extensive garlands, and narrative scenes. The statuary of the Angkor Wat is considered conservative, being more static and less graceful than earlier work. Other elements of the design have been destroyed by lifting and the passes of the time, including glided stucco on the towers, lining on some figures on the bas-reliefs, and wooden ceiling panels and doors. The outer wall, 1,024 mara by 802 mara and 4.5 mara high, is surrounded by a 30 mara apron of open ground and more 190 mara wide and over 5 kilometers in perimeter. The more extended 1.5 kilometers from the east to the west and 1.3 kilometers from north to south. Access to the temple is by an earth bank to the east and sandstone causeway to the west. The latter, the main entrance, is a later addition, partially preparation, a wooden bridge that incorporates at each of the cardinal points. The western is by far the largest and has 3 ruined towers. Glazer notes that these incorporate both heights and echoes from the form of the temple proper. Under the southern tower is a statue known as the bridge, originally an 8-armed statue of Vishnu, may have occupied the temple's central shrine. Galleries run between the towers and as far as 2 further entrances on either side of the Ângkôr, often referred to as elephant gates, as they are large enough to admit those animals. These galleries have square pillars on the outer west side and closed board on the inner east side. The ceiling between the pillars is decorated with lotus roses. The west face of the wall with dancing figures, and the east face of the wall with baluster with those dancing mouth figures on branching animals and devatas, including south of the entrance, the only one in the temple to be showing her teeth. The outer work encloses a space of 120,000 square miles, which besides the temple proper was originally occupied by the city, and to the north of the temple, the royal palace. Like all circular buildings of Angkor, these were built of perishable materials rather than of stone, so nothing remains of them except the outlines of some of the streets. Most of the area is now covered by the forest. A 350-mile causeway connects the western Cambodia to the temple proper, with Naga balustrades and 6 sets of steps leading down to the city on either side. Its side also features a library with the entrance at each cardinal point in front of the third set of stairs from the entrance, and a pond between library and temple itself. The ponds are later additions to the design, as is the cruciform terrace guarded by the lions connecting the causeway to the central structure. The temple stands on a terrace raised higher than the city. It is made of 3 rectangular galleries rising to the central tower, its level higher than the last. The 2 inner galleries each have 4 large towers at their ordinal corners. Surrounding the higher 5th tower, this pattern is sometimes called a quincunx and represents the mountains of Meru. Because the temple faces west, the features are all set back towards to the east, leaving more space to be filled in each enclosure and gallery on the west side. For the same reason, the west-facing steps are shallower than those on the other sides. Manika interprets the galleries as being dedicated to the king, Brahma, the moon, and Vishnu. Its gallery has a cupola at each of the points. The outer galleries measure 187 miles by 250 miles, with pavilions rather than towers at the corners. The gallery is open to the outside of the temple. We call them half galleries extended and contrasting the structure. Connecting the outer gallery to the second enclosure on the west side is a cruciform cloister called breastbone, meaning the Thousand Buddhas Gallery. Buddha images were left in the cloister by pilgrims over the centuries, although most have now been removed. This area has many inscriptions relating to good deeds of pilgrims, most written in Khmer but others in Burmese and Japanese. The 4 small courtyards marked out by the cloister may originally have been filled with water. North and south of the cloister are libraries. Beyond, the second and inner galleries are connected to each other, and the two flanking libraries by another cruciform terrace, again a layer addition. From a second level, of course, devatas are bound on the walls singing or in groups of up to 4. The second level encloses is 100 miles by 115 miles and may originally have been flooded to represent the ocean around the Mount Meru. 3 sets of the steps on each side lead up to the corner towers and cupolas of the inner gallery. The very steep stairways represent the difficulty of ascending to the kingdom of God. This inner gallery, called the Bakan, is a 60 miles square with the axial galleries connecting each cupola with the central shrine, and subsidiary shrine located below the corner towers. The roofings of the galleries are decorated with the motif of the body of a snake ending in the heads of lions or garudas. Carved lintels and pediments decorate the entrance to the galleries and to the shrine. The tower above the central shrine raised 43 mara to a height of 65 mara above the ground. Unlike those of previous temple mountains, the central tower is raised above the surrounding floor. The shrine itself, originally occupied by a statue of Vishnu and open on its side, was walled in when the temple was converted to Theravada Buddhism. The new walls featuring standing Buddhas. In year 1934, the conservator George Tove excavated the pit beneath the central shrine. Filled with the sand and water, it had already been robbed of its treasure, but he did find a sharp foundation deposit of gold leaf 2 miles above the ground level. Integrated with the architecture of the building, and one of the causes of its fame is Angkor's extensive decoration, which predominantly takes the form of the basement reef. The inner walls of the outer gallery bear a series of large-scale scenes, mainly depicting episodes from the Hindu epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. Hayam has called this the greatest known linear arrangement of stone carving. From the northwest corner anti-clockwise, the western gallery shows the Battle of Lanka. From the Ramayana, in which Rama defeats Ravana, and the Battle of Kurukshetra from the Mahabharata, showing the mutual annihilation of the Kaurava and Pandava clans. On the southern gallery follow the only historical scene, a procession of Sri Yavaman II, then the 32 houses and 37 heavens of Hinduism. On the eastern gallery is one of the most celebrated scenes, the churning of the Sea of Milk, showing 92 asuras and 88 devas using the serpent Vasuki to turn the sea under Vishnu direction. Manika counts only 91 asuras and explains the asymmetrical numbers as representing the numbers of the days from the winter solstice to the spring equinox, and from the equinox to the summer solstice. It is followed by Vishnu defeating Asuras, a 16th century addition. The northern gallery shows Krishna's victory over Bana, where according to the place, the workmanship is at its worst. Angkor is decorated with a depiction of Apsaras and Devata. There are more than 1,796 depictions of Devata in the present research inventory. Angkor architects employ small Apsara images, 30 to 40 cm or 12 to 16 inches, as decorative motifs on pillars and walls. They incorporated larger Devata images or full-body portraits measuring approximately 95 to 110 cm, more prominently at every level of the temple, from the entry pavilion to the tops of the high towers. In year 1927, Safo Machar published a study cataloging the remarkable diversity of the art. Headdresses, garments, dance, jewelry, and decorative flowers, which Macha concluded were based on actual practices of the Angkor period. The monument was made of 5 to 10 million sandstone blocks with a maximum weight of 1.5 tons each. The entire city of Angkor used far greater amounts of stone than all the Egyptian pyramids combined, and occupied an area significantly greater than modern-day Paris. Moreover, unlike the Egyptian pyramids which used limestone quarried barely 0.5 kilometers away all the time, the entire city of the Angkor was built with sandstone quarried 40 kilometers away. This sandstone had to be transported from Mount Kulen, a quarry approximately 40 kilometers northeast. The route has been suggested to span 35 kilometers along a canal towards Tonle Sap Lake, another 35 kilometers crossing the lake, and finally 15 kilometers against the current along Siem Reap River, making a total journey of 90 kilometers. However, Asho Uchida and Ichita Shimoda of Waseda University in Tokyo, Japan, have discovered in year 2011 a shorter 35 kilometer canal connecting Mount Kulen and Angkor using satellite imagery. The two believe that the Khmer used this route instead. Virtually of all its surface, columns, lintels, and even roofs are carved. There are kilometers of reliefs illustrating scenes from Indian literature, including unicorns, griffins, winged dragons pulling the carrot, as well as warriors following an elephant-mounted leader, and celestial dancing girls with elaborate hairstyles. The gallery wall alone is decorated with almost 1,000 square meters of bas-reliefs. Holes on some of the Angkor walls indicates that they may have been decorated with bronze sheaths. These were highly prized in ancient times and were a prime targets for robbers. While excavating Kachuharu, Alex Evans, a stone merchant and sculptor, recreated a stone sculpture under 1.2 miles. This took about 60 days to carve. Roger Hopkins and Mark Lehner also conducted experiments to quarry limestone, which took 22 days to quarry about 400 tons of stone. The labor force to quarry, transport, carve, and install so much sandstone must have run into the thousands, including many highly skilled artisans. The skills required to carve these sculptures were developed hundreds of years earlier, as demonstrated by some artifacts that have been dated to the 7th century before the Khmer came to power.